Good morning. It's Thursday, July 1st. And this morning I want to talk about members of the Trump family, specifically Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner. And I got this information from an article in the Miami Herald. Now, I never really thought much of the job that Ivanka did at the White House, because it was not clear to me exactly what her job was. It was clear to me that Jared and Ivanka got their jobs because of, as they call it, nepotism. If they weren't Trump's children, they would have never gotten those jobs. They had no experience in big government. But this is not about the jobs that they had and their responsibilities at the White House. And this surprised me, because it turns out that Ivanka and Jared and her 3 kids are renting an apartment in one of the Surfside towers about 2 blocks from the collapse. And we didn't hear anything about it until now, because they weren't there at the time of the collapse. But it turns out that Ivanka and Jared did something that I would not have expected. As soon as they got back to their Surfside apartment, which is a block away from the tower that collapsed, they opened their wallets in order to help the people, the first responders and the rescuers, and all of those people who were giving up a portion of their lives to search the remains and take care of those who needed to be taken care of. Ivanka and Jared organized a week's worth of food for the first responders and other people who had jumped in to help. They didn't have to do that. And they didn't make a big deal out of it. They didn't tell everybody, look what we did. They just did it. And in my mind, that's almost as heroic as being down there digging through the rubble. And they didn't make a big deal out of this. They went about their business quietly. They didn't broadcast the deed that they had just performed. They just did it, which is something that I appreciate. There are too many people in this world who will do things like this and expect gratitude, expect the payment of some kind, or at least some fame out of it. But Jared and Ivanka did this quietly. And I don't know how the newspaper found out about it, but I'm sure that somebody just mentioned it to them and the newspaper saw fit to write about it. I can't imagine what it would be like to be a first responder to a building collapse and have to spend days and nights digging through the rubble looking for the remains. I don't know if I could ever do anything. And I greatly appreciate the fact that Ivanka and Jared saw it as their, let's call it, duty to help those people. That's what good neighbors do. You can depend on them. And I never got the impression that Jared and Ivanka were good neighbors, not in the actions that I saw going on in the White House. And I know that they were bit players in the performance that went on there, and that the director controlled everything. But I see it as their performance in the White House was driven by a sense of loyalty, and that they were probably trying to do the best job that they could. So this incident in their lives has raised them up a little bit in my mind. Of course, on their own, they did what they could. And that's a lot more than I could say for a lot of people in similar situations. So you see, I guess this is a lesson for me. Don't judge the book by its cover. The Kushners were helping their adopted neighborhood in the best possible way that they could, and we have to give them credit for that. Its community has welcomed them. Obviously, they felt it was very important to do their best for their community too. And so they did what they could, what they were best equipped to do. And we have to give them credit for that. I give them immense credit for doing what they did. Also give Ivanka additional credit, because on her Facebook page, she never mentions anything about their generosity. She was only worried on her Facebook page about getting the COVID vaccine at the local CVS store. So they went quietly about their business. No bravado, nothing Trumpian about the whole thing. And so I leave you with that thought, that impressions made under certain situations can be wrong, and that people will respond in a crisis in a way that you never imagined. And certainly I never thought of Jared and Ivanka as particularly generous people or anything. But you see, you never know. And of course, I don't follow them closely either. But that has nothing to do with it. They stepped up to the plate when the time came, and they did the best they could do. And they deserve all the credit in the world for that. So I'm going to leave you with that thought, Don't judge a book by the cover. Don't take the first thing that comes into your mind and believe it. There's too much of that goes around. So I'll say goodbye now, and I will see you in the morning. Bye.